He slapped me hard, the sound filling the room, then yanked my hair and slammed my head against the wall. The pain rushed through me, but the hurt from his betrayal was even worse. I had just given birth to our daughter, and instead of happiness, his face was full of anger. "I wanted a son," he hissed, and his words hurt more than the slap. The man who once loved me now looked at me with pure rage. I couldn't understand how things had gotten so bad. Just hours ago, I had held our daughter, Sophia, in my arms for the first time, her tiny face full of innocence and hope. I had imagined that she would bring us closer, bind us as a family, but Matthew had barely looked at her. His first words had been, "You failed me, Samantha." It was as if he couldn't bear the sight of the child we had created together because she wasn't a son. I could feel my vision blur as tears welled up, not from the physical pain, but from the heart-wrenching realization that the man I loved, the father of my child, had become a monster. I wanted to scream, but no words came out. All I could think about was how quickly everything had spiraled out of control. My name is Samantha, and this is the story of how my life shattered and how I rebuilt it. One filled with betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately the strength to rise again. It all began in Seattle, where I first met Matthew Jameson when we were in high school. He was quiet, always working on his computer in the library, but there was something about him that intrigued me. He seemed so focused, so different from the other boys who were all about sports or parties. I remember watching him from across the room, wondering what went on in his mind as he typed away. One day, after weeks of building up the courage, I finally approached him. "Hey Matthew, do you have a minute?" I asked, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. He looked up from his computer, surprised, his eyes narrowing slightly in confusion before softening. Sure," he replied, his voice quiet but friendly. From that moment, we were inseparable. Matthew became my high school sweetheart, the boy who made me believe in forever. We spent endless hours together, talking about everything and nothing. We had dreams, big dreams. He wanted to work in tech, and I had aspirations of making it in marketing. We made plans, whispered promises under the stars, and shared our first kiss at prom. It felt like a fairy tale, like nothing could ever break us apart. By the time we graduated, I was convinced we were destined to be together. We married when I was 23, filled with hope and excitement. I had just started my career as a marketing consultant, while Matthew worked as an aita technician. Life seemed perfect, especially when we found out I was pregnant. I thought our love was strong enough to weather anything, but I was wrong. The early days of motherhood were blissful. I remember holding Sophia in my arms, her soft breaths filling the quiet of the room. I would watch Matthew as he held her too, though not as often as I had hoped. The joy I saw on his face when he first held her seemed to fade quickly, replaced by a distance that grew wider with each passing day. But everything changed after Sophia was born. Matthew began coming home late from work, sometimes not coming home at all. I would sit on the couch, my heart pounding with worry, waiting to hear the creak of the front door, hoping for some kind of explanation that would ease the knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. "Where have you been?" I would ask, trying to keep my voice steady, not wanting to accuse him outright, though deep down I feared the worst. "Just work, Samantha," he would reply, brushing past me without even meeting my eyes. "You know how it is." But I didn't know. What I did know was that things were falling apart. I felt like I was losing him, and with each passing day, the Matthew I had fallen in love with seemed further and further out of reach. The breaking point came one evening during another argument. The house was quiet except for the sound of the clock ticking in the background, a reminder of how late it had gotten. I had waited up for Matthew again, and when he finally came through the door, it was clear something was wrong. He was agitated, barely able to meet my eyes. I had asked him, once again, where he had been. "This isn't just about work, Matthew. What's going on?" I demanded, frustration bubbling inside me. I was exhausted, emotionally and physically, and I couldn't take the distance between us any longer. He snapped, his voice sharp and cutting. "I'm doing my best. Maybe if you weren't so needy all the time, I wouldn't have to stay out." His words were like a slap in the face, but what came next was worse. In a blur of anger, Matthew lunged at me. His hands gripped my neck, pushing me down to the floor with a force that knocked the wind out of me. I was stunned, staring up at him in disbelief. The man I had married, the man I had built a life with, was now a stranger. I could barely recognize him through the haze of my shock and fear. For a moment, everything stood still. It was as though time had slowed down, the only sound my heartbeat pounding in my ears. He didn't just hurt me physically. It was as though he had crushed my spirit, my hope that things could ever go back to the way they were. I stayed on the floor, frozen, while he stormed out of the house. He didn't come back for days. I didn't call him. I couldn't. I didn't know what to say or how to process what had happened. But deep down, I knew that things would never be the same. Then came the betrayal that shattered what little hope I had left. It had been weeks since the incident, and Matthew's absence had become a constant ache in my heart. I tried to hold myself together for Sophia's sake, but the loneliness gnawed at me, leaving me feeling empty and lost. One evening, as I scrolled through my phone, hoping for some distraction from the silence of the house, I saw something that made my heart stop. A photo of Matthew, smiling and carefree, but he wasn't alone. Standing beside him, laughing on a beach, was Rachel, my younger sister. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe it was an old photo, a memory from before everything had gone so wrong. But as I clicked through the images, the truth became undeniable. There they were, in photo after photo, looking like the perfect couple. My stomach turned as I realized what had been happening right under my nose. Rachel, who had always been the free spirit, the one who never took life seriously, had somehow become a part of this nightmare. She was supposed to be my sister, my confidant, the one person I could trust, but she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I stared at the screen, numb. How long had this been going on? Had they been seeing each other while Matthew and I were still trying to hold our marriage together? How could they do this to me, to Sophia? I called my parents that night, my hands shaking as I dialed their number. When my mother answered, her voice warm and familiar, I couldn't hold back the tears any longer. "Mom, Rachel, she's with Matthew. They've been seeing each other." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when my mother finally spoke, her voice was filled with shock and disappointment. "Samantha, hi, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. We'll help however we can." But no words of comfort could ease the pain of that betrayal. I felt like my entire world had collapsed in on itself. Not only had I lost my husband, but I had also lost my sister. It was a double betrayal, one that left me feeling more alone than I had ever felt before. Days passed in a blur of disbelief and heartache. I tried to focus on Sophia, to give her the love and attention she deserved, but it was hard. Every time I thought about what Matthew and Rachel had done, the anger and hurt bubbled up again, threatening to overwhelm me. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, I discovered that they had been draining money from our joint account, my money. They had been using it to fund their new lavish lifestyle, leaving me with nothing but unpaid bills and an empty bank account. It was as if they had taken everything from me, my trust, my family, and now my financial security. In one of the darkest moments of my life, a familiar face walked through the door, Mr. Jameson, Matthew's father. He had always been kind to me, treating me like the daughter he never had, and now, as he sat beside me, the disappointment in his eyes mirrored my own. "I'm deeply sorry for what Matthew has done, Samantha," he said quietly, his voice filled with regret. "I had no idea things had gotten this bad. I want to help you. I've set aside $200,000 for Sophia's future. Please, take it." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I shook my head. "I can't take charity. I need to stand on my own." "This isn't charity," he insisted. "It's for Sophia, and I want to help you rebuild. You're strong, Samantha, stronger than you realize. Let's turn this around. You've always had an eye for design. Why not open your own home decor boutique? Use this money to create something for yourself and for Sophia. You deserve that." His words sparked something inside me, something that had been buried under the weight of betrayal and heartache. For so long, I had felt powerless, trapped in the chaos that Matthew and Rachel had created. But now I saw a way out, a chance to rebuild, to reclaim control of my life. With Mr. Jameson's encouragement, I decided to take the leap. The thought of starting a business, a home decor boutique, gave me something to focus on, something positive to channel my energy into. I used the money to rent a small storefront in a bustling part of Seattle. Over the next few months, I threw myself into making graceful designs a reality. Every detail mattered: the way the furniture was arranged, the colors of the walls, the lighting that would make the space feel warm and inviting. I wanted the boutique to be a place of beauty and comfort, a reflection of what I hoped to create in my own life. I worked long hours, sometimes late into the night after putting Sophia to bed. It was exhausting, but it was also the most alive I had felt in months. As I sketched designs and arranged displays, I could feel the pieces of my broken life slowly coming back together. This was more than just a business. It was my way of taking control of my future, a future that didn't include Matthew or Rachel. The day of the grand opening arrived, and I stood outside the boutique, my heart pounding with both excitement and nerves. The space looked perfect, filled with elegant furniture, hand-picked home decor items, and carefully curated displays. I had put everything I had into making this place special, and now it was time to see if it would succeed. Mr. Jameson, ever the supportive partner, stood beside me, his presence a source of strength. He had been there every step of the way, offering advice, encouragement, and even helping with some of the manual labor when things got overwhelming. "You've done it, Samantha," he said, his voice filled with pride. "This place is going to thrive." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me. I knew I couldn't have done it without him. He had believed in me when I wasn't sure I believed in myself. As the doors opened, customers began to trickle in, admiring the displays and browsing through the selection. I greeted each one with a smile, sharing my passion for design and helping them find the perfect pieces for their homes. The excitement in the air was contagious, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. Graceful Designs was off to a promising start, and I could see a future where I didn't have to rely on anyone but myself. But just as I was beginning to heal, the past came crashing back. It started with messages from Rachel, mocking, taunting, as if she couldn't stand the idea of me moving on without them. She sent photos of her and Matthew in exotic locations, beaches, luxury resorts, fancy restaurants. Each message was like a knife to my heart, reopening old wounds that had barely begun to heal. "You're really going to let this little shop keep you busy?" One of her messages read, "You should come visit us. Life is amazing here." I tried to ignore it, but the anger and hurt boiled inside me. How could she be so cruel? She had taken everything from me, my husband, my money, and my trust. And now, she couldn't even let me have this one thing, this new life I was trying to build for myself and Sophia. One evening, after yet another message from Rachel, I broke down. I called Mr. Jameson, my voice shaking as I tried to explain how much this was hurting me. I thought I was moving on, I confessed, tears streaming down my face. But every time Rachel contacts me, it's like I'm being pulled back into the same nightmare. I don't know how to make it stop. Mr. Jameson listened quietly, his calm presence grounding me. "Samantha," he said softly, "you've come so far. You can't let them continue to have this power over you. It's time to take control." His words hit me hard, and I knew he was right. I couldn't keep letting Rachel and Matthew dictate my emotions. I had worked too hard to build this new life, and I wasn't going to let them ruin it. But I needed closure. I needed to confront them once and for all. Mr. Jameson had an idea. "What if we use their greed against them?" he suggested. "They've shown their true colors. Money is what they care about most. We can spread a rumor, make them think you're about to receive a large inheritance. It would draw them back here, and then you can confront them on your terms." At first, the idea seemed too far-fetched, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Greed had always been their weakness, and if I could use that to bring them back to me, I could finally get the closure I so desperately needed. We put the plan into action, spreading rumors through mutual acquaintances about a large inheritance I was supposedly set to receive. We knew it wouldn't take long for the news to reach Matthew and Rachel, and we were right. Within weeks, they were back in Seattle, drawn by the promise of easy money. They walked into graceful designs, their smug expressions barely hidden behind fake smiles. It was almost surreal, seeing them standing there together. Matthew, the man I had once loved, and Rachel, the sister who had betrayed me. They looked like they were living the perfect life, but I knew better. I could see the cracks beneath the surface, the desperation in their eyes. "Samantha," Matthew said casually, as if nothing had happened between us. "It's been a while. We heard about this big inheritance. Care to share the details?" I forced myself to smile, keeping my composure. "Actually," I replied, my voice steady, "I think you'll find out soon enough." As we sat down at a small table in the boutique, I could feel the tension in the air. They were eager, greedy for the money they thought was coming their way. But what they didn't realize was that this meeting wasn't about them. It was about me taking back control of my life. As I sat across from Matthew and Rachel, I could feel the weight of everything that had happened bearing down on me. The betrayal, the lies, the pain they had caused. But I kept my composure. This was my moment, and I wouldn't let them see me falter. "I know what you've both done," I began, my voice calm but firm. "You stole from me, you lied, you betrayed me. And now, you think you can just walk back into my life and take more." Matthew shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His confidence, which had been so obvious when he walked in, was beginning to crumble. "Samantha, it's not like that?" "Oh, it's exactly like that," I interrupted, my eyes locking with his. "But you see, I'm not the woman you left behind." I've built a life for myself, and I'm thriving. And as for the inheritance you're so eager to get your hands on, it's not going to either of you." Rachel's face twisted in anger, her voice trembling as she spat. "You're making a mistake, Samantha. We're family." I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Family doesn't betray one another, Rachel. You lost that title the moment you chose to steal from me." Just then, the door to the boutique opened, and Mr. Jameson walked in. His presence added a gravity to the moment, his calm authority unmistakable. He approached the table and sat down beside me, his eyes never leaving Matthew and Rachel. "The inheritance," Mr. Jameson said, his voice steady, "is going to Sophia. Neither of you are entitled to a single penny." The shock on their faces was priceless. I could see their world collapsing around them as they realized they had been outplayed. For the first time, I saw fear in their eyes, fear that they were about to lose everything they had so arrogantly assumed would be theirs. Matthew opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His usual smugness had vanished, replaced by a desperation I hadn't seen before. Rachel, too, was at a loss for words, her earlier bravado crumbling as the reality of the situation sank in. As they stormed out of the boutique, defeated, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had taken back my power, and it felt liberating. I had reclaimed control over my life and my future, and there was nothing they could do to take that away from me. Weeks passed, and Graceful Designs continued to thrive. The boutique had become a beloved part of the community, with customers returning week after week to browse the carefully curated collections I had put together. Each day, I grew more confident in myself and the life I was building for Sophia and me. But despite the success of the boutique, the memories of Matthew and Rachel still lingered. I couldn't forget the way they had torn my life apart, and I knew that I wouldn't find true closure until they faced the consequences of their actions. Then, one morning, I received a notice from the court. It was time for the legal proceedings against Matthew. Not only had he betrayed me financially, but he had also physically assaulted me, and now justice was finally within reach. The courtroom was filled with tension as Matthew stood before the judge. I sat quietly in the gallery, my hands clasped together in my lap, listening as the charges against him were read out: domestic violence and theft. The weight of his actions was clear for everyone to see. There was no hiding from the truth now. As I testified about the night he struck me, describing the moment he slapped me and slammed my head against the wall, the courtroom fell silent. It was difficult to relive those memories, to speak about the violence and betrayal that had nearly destroyed me. But I knew it was necessary. I needed to ensure that Matthew was held accountable for the pain he had caused, not just to me, but to our daughter as well. The judge listened carefully to both sides, and after what felt like an eternity, the sentence was finally handed down. Matthew was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the physical assault and domestic violence. His face remained emotionless as the verdict was read, but I could feel the weight lift off my shoulders. This was justice. This was the closure I had been waiting for. But that wasn't all. In addition to the prison sentence, Matthew was also ordered to pay a $50,000 fine for the pain and suffering he had caused. This financial penalty was a small price for him to pay considering the damage he had done, but it was a reminder that actions have consequences. Furthermore, the court mandated that Matthew repay the money he had stolen from our joint account, ensuring that Sophia's future would be financially secure. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of the trial, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Matthew had finally been held accountable for his actions, both physically and financially. He was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I had won. I had taken back control of my life, and nothing Matthew or Rachel did could change that. In the weeks that followed, Graceful Designs continued to flourish. The boutique had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of my strength, of everything I had overcome. Customers flocked to the shop, and soon I began expanding, bringing in more exclusive designs and even hosting workshops on interior decorating. But it wasn't just the success of the boutique that made me feel whole again. It was the little moments, watching Sophia take her first steps, hearing her laugh as we played in the park, knowing that I had built a life for us, free from the toxic influence of Matthew and Rachel. Mr. Jameson remained a constant presence in our lives, offering support and guidance whenever I needed it. He had been there from the beginning, helping me rebuild after everything had fallen apart, and I knew I could always count on him. As time passed, the memories of Matthew and Rachel faded into the background, replaced by a sense of peace and fulfillment. I no longer felt the need to look over my shoulder, wondering if they would try to worm their way back into my life. They were gone, and I was free. One evening, as I stood in the boutique, watching the sunset over Seattle, I realized how far I had come. I wasn't the same woman who had been broken by betrayal and heartache. I had rebuilt my life from the ground up, and I was stronger than ever before. As I closed the door to the shop and locked it for the night, I knew that this was just the beginning. I had reclaimed my life, my happiness, and my future, and no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with strength and courage. Thank you for listening to Samantha's journey of betrayal, strength, and justice. If you were inspired by her story, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. For more stories of resilience and empowerment, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Remember, your support helps us continue to bring powerful stories like this one to life. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next video.